Hey everyone, it's Jordan Robertson with Benzinga. Joining me today is James Sullivan, VP of Strategy and Compliance and Chief Legal Officer at BKYI. How are you, Jim?
I'm great, Jordan. Nice to see you today.
Nice to see you as well. So remind us about your company. What do you do and what is your target market?
Sure. Well, BioKey is a company that's been around for almost 3 decades doing biometric identity and now identity and access management, multi-factor authentication for some of the largest companies in the world. The company is always working with leading edge customers that want to have the most secure way to know who's accessing their systems and that people are exactly who they say they are.
What makes biometric authentication easier or better than traditional authentication?
Well, I think it's interesting because as everyone thinks about how do they make systems secure, they sometimes are forgetting the end user experience. And for an end user, the getting more secure typically means life gets harder. You have to fumble and bumble for a token in your pocket or on your keychain. You have to find your phone, which may not be charged, bring it over and get a code, use an app. With biometrics, you actually, for once in life, make security equal an easier user experience in the sense that you're able to simply be you, touch a scanner, show your face, use your palm as a scan, and essentially that identifies you positively and immediately. So as I like to say, authentication is best when it's over with. And if it's over with and it got you properly authenticated, then it really is a great user experience.
And super interesting too. So what exactly is identity-bound biometrics? How is it different from ordinary biometrics? And is that term unique to BioKey?
Sure, that's a great point because when people think biometrics, they think of Touch ID or Face ID, something that essentially has the end user controlling their phone, deciding who's enrolled into it as a user. You can enroll your spouse or your kids or even another person into your phone. The device essentially is the authenticator in that scenario and not the biometric, which simply accesses the device through a biometric. What identity-bound biometric does is essentially stores the biometric in a way that allows the relying party, as we call it, the employer, the online site, to be able to know for sure that it is a particular user by storing and matching their biometric as opposed to only relying on a phone which could have had someone else enrolled into it. So it's better long-term control, it's better governance. It allows you to be able to be absolutely sure that you're getting exactly the user that you're expecting and not someone that, for example, that user decided to hand off or delegate access to. So it's much more phishing resistant. It allows you to be able to be positive over time with remote workforces, with third-party suppliers that in some cases might have an incentive to share a credential. And again, that's one of the ways that an identity-bound biometrics will prevent that and secure the user to their identity.
Absolutely. Let's talk about insurance for a second. What is cyber insurance and how and why is it impacting your business today?
Well, cyber insurance has always been there, but it's really the idea of shifting risk to a third-party insurer for things that events that might be catastrophically expensive for a business to be able to address for themselves. So hacking, ransomware, breaches, those are all events that an insurance company will step in and say, if you take proper precautions, I will insure you, relying essentially on the law of large numbers to ensure that a user or a customer isn't taking risks, but meanwhile the insurance company is ready to spread that risk across their other customers and ensure that if somebody does get breached, that they'll have an insurance company step in and make all those payments. So it is important for the insurance company to know that those assets and those systems are properly secured. So in many cases, they enforce that a customer must actually step up their authentication to a two-factor or multi-factor approach. They make sure that they have the proper firewalls and security so that the insurance company isn't telling a reckless driver, as an analogy, that I'm going to go ahead and insure you for the accidents you have. They're going to make sure that they're a safe driver. And in the case of safe businesses, it's using things like our biometric multi-factor authentication to ensure that a business is protected and making sure that they're not vulnerable to the kinds of breaches that a cyber insurer would be responsible and liable for.
Why is there continued resistance to the adoption of biometrics?
Well, I think that a lot of that comes from a misunderstanding of the kinds of technologies that are being used and their benefits for people. Often you think of biometrics in the press as being used in some sort of adversarial way where a government or someone is monitoring people and classifying or identifying them based on the use of a facial recognition technology, for example. But what BioKey does is much different than that. We're typically in mutually trusting relationships between employers and employees, or between suppliers and their customers, or even supply chain within an entity, to be essentially where each side is benefiting from the use of biometrics. For an end user, the confidence that they are the only ones that can access their account, and that somebody can't phish their credential, or somebody can't be essentially knowing that they use one password on multiple sites, all of those issues go away. And at the end of the day, it's easier for that end user to be able to use the technology. So I think sometimes it's that misunderstanding that biometrics is adversarial, and ultimately there's the other misunderstanding, which is that people believe that biometrics has to be based around secrecy, which, when you think of secrecy around passwords and other shared secrets, if they're disclosed, you can reset them. People apply that same sort of thinking to biometrics and say that if your face or your fingerprint is disclosed, you can't reset it because it's intrinsic to you. But really, a biometric system never relies on secrecy. A biometric system uses integrity to make sure that I'm actually measuring a real person's face, getting that data securely and high integrity back to my server, where I then compare it with the stored enrollment data. So if I have a high integrity in that process, secrecy doesn't really affect it, and I don't have to worry about the fact that even if everyone can see my face, that they cannot look like me when a biometric authentication is being done. So again, it's a misunderstanding that biometrics is based around secrecy, and again, some high-profile news that you see out there. But ultimately, biometrics doesn't have those vulnerabilities that people believe, and over time, that truth will start to, I think, really show the market that biometrics has the benefits that everyone understands, and everyone loves the use of Face ID and Touch ID. They can get that benefit in their workplace as far as ease of access for their employees, and again, without the kinds of risks that are misunderstood in the market.
Wonderful. And lastly, what's a key takeaway investors should know about your company?
Well, I think BioKey is really running under the radar for quite a while now. We've had a company that for a period was making hardware, and that caused some of our classifications to be more in the hardware electronics space as opposed to the security software space. So I think if you look at BioKey in the context of what it is, which is a very long track record, great customer list, lots of customers, and growing revenue, our company is one that you can see as sort of a diamond in the rough amongst a lot of companies that are either just coming out with an idea and don't have any real proven customer base to be able to show that the idea is being accepted and used by the market. So in that sense, BioKey is transformed from what people have probably thought of it as in the past, which is primarily a biometric or electronics company, to now being a software security, identity, and access management company, which is a much hotter space. And I think we have a great example of how our customers are getting value out of our product. So that's what I want people to take away, is take a look at BioKey today as opposed to the BioKey that they might have looked at 5-10 years ago, which again is a very different company at this point through our acquisitions.
Sure. Amazing. Appreciate all the insights here today, Jim. I hope to have you back real soon.
Great. Nice to talk to you, Jordan.